welcome to Queer Theology. This is the channel. Queer Theology is taught by Pastor Makellon. And today we are doing the Greek words of the week. The Greek word of the week. As we've already done the Hebrew word of the week. Now we're going to the Greek word of the week. Now the Greek word of the week is Makellon. That is a meat market. That is a meat market, or what you call a marketplace. And the word of origin is of foreign origin. I think it's Latin from another book I have, and it's a meat market in all of them. So yeah, there is a word. Makellum, Marcella most likely, is a Latin word. A place where meat and other articles of food are sold. And meat market, provision market, in the authorized version, it is a shambles. And when we read the verse, where the verse is used, when we read the word, everything in the meat market being sold, eat nothing, inquiring on account of conscience. So it's a very dicey place, very dicey verse. Whatsoever is sold in the shambles that eat, asking no question for conscience sake. And eat anything that is sold in the meat market without asking questions for conscience sake. Whatsoever is sold in the shambles that eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Eat everything that is sold in the meat market, asking no questions for conscience sake. So Paul is saying you are free to eat anything from the Makellon. Now, it's a very tricky thing because, he was talking to Jews and Gentiles, but mostly Gentiles, because this was a letter, as we call them, emails, to the church in Corinth. And when an email is written, they read it out. That was the system in the church those days in Corinth. Very rich town, by the way, very, very rich town. You should study the history of Corinth. And what happened is Jews were divided as to whether they should eat non-kosher food. And Paul is saying, guess what? You can eat non-kosher. And I believe he was talking to both Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians. Of course, some people disagree with that because they said it wasn't that so, but I believe Paul was talking to both Jewish and Gentile Christians, because it was a letter to the Corinthians and it was a letter to the church in Corinth. And remember, the church in Corinth was both both Jewish and Gentile. And so when he wrote this verse, as I've told you, this section in the email, he was saying basically, you eat anything that is sold in the market without asking question for conscience sake. Because some people would always ask questions and say, oh no, am I breaking the law? Will God strike me dead? And all of these things. And he said, no, eat anything that is sold. Don't ask a question like, is this bad food? Is this good food? And because this was, the reason why Paul was so brilliant at saying this, Europe was a different continent to that of Israel, in Middle East. The cuisines were different. Can you imagine if Paul went to China? Do you know there are foods that are not written in the Torah, whether they are good or bad? But Paul would say, just eat anything in China. Now that's the funny thing. In China they say you can also eat a human one time, or a dog, without you knowing. But Paul is here saying, just eat. So So it's a very interesting verse, but it's a very interesting word, Makellon. I know we can talk about this, but get the message from the Makellon verse and know that you can eat anything, and you're free to eat anything without asking question. And that's what we stand for. We are not we and of course we respect Jewish people and Muslims who may find this a bit, it violates their rights, their eating rights, or it is a call to license, tempted to sin in their view. It's up to you. But again, even some Jews should not be bound by culture, neither Muslims. We're going to talk about this in another segment, whereby liberty, liberal religion, there's liberal Islam, liberal Christianity, liberal Judaism, liberal Buddhism, liberal Hinduism, whereby laws are not necessarily things that you must do, but they are just suggestions. They're just suggestions. It's not really, you're not bound to follow them. And they're just guiding principles about life. And someone can just say, I don't like pork, it gives me some toxicity, or it gives me some problems, so I won't be eating it. And you can listen, and it's up to you, and say, nah, it's okay, I love pork, it makes me happy, and you eat your pork. And you see, you're not asking yourself, and neither has a person who has told you that maybe pork is not good for you. He hasn't enforced it and said, you've eaten pork, so you're going to die, you're a bad person, you're not on the side of God. So there is our word, Makellon, or Macellum in Latin, the Greek word for the week.